us taking pictures. Yeah.
Okay. Gonna go get a Diet Coke? Yeah. Are you walking tonight? Of course we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Molly Gordon and Kathryn Gallagher.
Hello.
How are you, Kathryn?
Oh, Molly, I'm good. How are you doing?
I was just in a pandemic doing my thing.
Oh, ain't that the truth? My God. I moved from earlier. The sun went down for me.
You were in pure darkness. You need to find your light, as Janet says.
I had to find my light. This is not prime light, but you know, I got there.
We're still on Rolling Heart's iPhone. No, I've changed it.
We're all learning how to use these things. Kathryn, where are you in the world?
I'm in Boston. Well, I'm in Weymouth, Massachusetts. So I'm at my grandmother's house. My grandmother who is no longer with us, but I'm in her house and sort of like, she was a dancer too. And she has like these little dancers everywhere. It's such a fantastical wonderland, this house. Where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles in my childhood home.
I have so many memories in that home.
Exactly, after where we would go after rehearsal.
Oh my gosh. The good times we've had.
The good times we had.
So, you always had really good snacks.
I did. We love a plate of snacks. It's our thing.
Always a great mixed nut selection.
We love.
I don't know if I think I'm remembering a really beautiful almond. Anyway, hope that's interesting to anyone.
Well, should we talk about when we joined Adderley and the shows we did and kind of how we got to where we are now?
I think we should.
All right. So
you joined before me. You joined when
I joined when I was 3 years old, and I can't remember what my first show was. Cinderella, maybe. Maybe Janet can help me. Maybe Cinderella.
I think
And The Wiz. My first show was The Wiz.
I think the first time you sang was Home.
You're right.
You sang.
See, that's what we
Home.
need.
Oh my goodness.
No,
You're right.
Cinderella was her first, and then The Wiz. I remember.
Fact check.
Hand in Cinderella. You held my hands and you sang to me on stage when you were 3.
When I was 3. And I immediately felt so at home and so safe. And I had just never been anywhere like that in my entire life. And the way that Janet and Alana opened their hearts and their home to our community was just the most beautiful thing in the entire world. And then I just kept doing it. I couldn't get enough of it. And I couldn't believe that there was a place that we could do these kind of huge productions when we were like 4 years old. It was insane. And then I was so lucky that somehow I got moved to be with an older group. And that's where I met, I don't know, I could barely read at the time. And Janet had to shout out things at me. Yeah. And I met and I met Ben Platt and fell in love with him, and he rejected me, didn't like me like that. But we became close friends. And then we became a group that would do shows every year. And then Kathryn, when did you join us?
I joined, so when I grew up in New York City, and I found the Adderley School because I was dancing in New York on the weekends, and I was doing Broadway Dance Center, and I'd never done theater before. I love to sing, but in New York, at the time, there weren't really as many sort of like youth theater programs because all the kids just started auditioning, I guess, or that's what someone told my mom, and she was like, not yet. And so when I moved to LA, we were looking at dance options, and it was kind of like
thinking about that today. Didn't you start in like private dance classes with me?
I started. It wasn't private, but it was you and me on Saturdays.
Yes.
And our first dance was to Crazy in Love.
How do you remember that? That's crazy.
I remember it because I had never learned choreography once in my life. I'd taken dance classes since I was 3 years old. My whole family's filled with professional dancers, but I could not remember choreography. And it was not until, this is going to make me sound really stupid, but stick with me. It was not until Alana's class, I had so much fun that when I went home, I wanted to practice.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, is that how you learn the routine? Because I'd never gone home and like wanted to do class again. But Alana made everything so fun and so like accessible and not terrifying, which was my previous dance experience. And then Alana, I think you were the one that was like, you should do theater here too. So it's all Alana's fault.
Doing the musicals, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then my first show was Hairspray, and it was, is it still the same structure where there's like the semesters, but then there's a year-long rep?
Yep.
I saw this version of Hairspray that was the semester one.
Yeah, it was like, and I was Corny Collins, because Adderley School has been gender bending roles.
Yes.
Way before anyone else. And I was Corny Collins, and then I moved up into like a second rep where I did Gypsy, but it wasn't Molly's class. But we were at the same time. So that was like when I first met Molly in Studio C.
And I remember us hoping that you would be brought into our class.
And then I was. What was our first show together was Into the Woods?
I think so.
And then Hairspray, and then Chicago.
But and then we did summer camp. But it was crazy. By the time we were 12, we had done maybe 87 productions. I don't know how they helped us do that in any way.
It was just like everything, and I think it speaks to this like really, loving and safe environment that Janet and Alana created, and Akina, who I don't think I met until the year later, maybe? Or did that make sense? I think that makes sense. I think so. And so that you guys created this safe environment for us to be young, but also have expectations to meet, which I think was so important because it made us respect ourselves, if that makes any sense.
They towed such a beautiful line of pushing us to be our best selves while also understanding, that we were 10 years old, but also what we had within us, seeing that we could, push ourselves to that place. And I think I just feel so lucky. I still think about to this day, like the freedom that I found there is what I carry with me for the rest of my life.
Yes, that's really the truth. It really is.
And the people, the collections of people, they created a family because they see like-minded spirits, and it's, I
mean, honestly, my closest friends in the world started because of Adderley. It was first I met Molly and Ben, and then Matisse and Bella, and like Matisse, Molly, Bella, and I called each other the sister. Wait, did I already mess it up? Is Sister to the Traveling Pants?
Yes.
SHTP. Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if we replaced the pants with something else, but I don't think we ever did. But we would have slumber parties after rehearsal every single Saturday. Yep. And it was just like the most fun and fostered this, like, I mean, Molly and I don't think I've gone more than like 3 months without seeing Molly since the day I met her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, except for quarantine. But
except that's why a full pandemic has to keep us.
That's the only thing.
And so can you both share a bit of your journey from Adderley to where you are now and what that was like?
Ma.
So when I didn't want to stop Adderley, but all the people in my group were older and were like going off. And so that was a devastating thing when Chicago had to be our last show. And then I finished high school, and then I was going to go to NYU, but I just, it just wasn't right for me at the time. So I didn't stay in school, and I ended up taking classes in New York and kind of making my own college and taking classes from all the different studios, and then worked hard to get an agent, and then just auditioned for a while and I was in a Sweeney Todd at Lincoln Center, and I got a small part on Orange is the New Black. And then the first thing I got was, the bigger thing that I got was this show called Animal Kingdom. So I moved back to LA and I did that. But it took me a while. I auditioned for like a couple years without getting anything, and it was such a learning experience. And I'm quite loud, and from doing theater, I needed to be brought down a little bit to do film and to learn how to be a real person again. That took me a minute. And then from Animal Kingdom, I've just been really blessed that I've gotten to do some fun movies and get to work with Melissa McCarthy, or I got to do this movie called Booksmart with Olivia Wilde. And yeah, so, and I was about to do a new HBO show, but this isn't happening right now. So that will happen when we're allowed to go back to work. But it definitely was a journey, and I definitely thought that I would be doing more. My first love was always theater, but I think I've really fallen in love with doing film work. So I hope to continue to do both. What about you, Kathryn?
Oh, that's so glorious. I love you. My path was a little bit odd, as I suppose they all are. I have always been a songwriter as well. And so for me, that was sort of my main focus immediately after high school. Well, during high school also. And while I was doing Adderley, I was sort of playing gigs at the Whiskey, and I was like, in the studio and recording my own music. And so when I finished high school, I went to USC to study songwriting in their pop music program. And then that program sort of wasn't my vibe. It was not, I missed performing. I missed theater. Actually, it's very funny. I remember I had a music manager at the time, and he was like, hey, I have this other client who's going out for this American Idiot tour. Have you ever done theater? Does that interest you at all? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. I was like obsessed with it in high school. I haven't done a show in like a year and a half, but because I was only like 19 at the time. And so he was like, okay, well, why don't you go in for it? And so it was the first time I'd done any dancing or anything in so long. And I sort of made it to final callbacks, and I didn't get it, which was heartbreaking at the time, but it sort of like, got my sort of like desire back. And so I started taking like an improv class, and then I went part-time at college and took like a writing class and sort of did what Molly did. And I created my own sort of curriculum. And then really was just focusing on songwriting in LA. And then my friend Ben Platt, obviously, called me and said his friend Michael wanted to meet me, and he was directing this production of Spring Awakening. And then through a series of wild turns, I ended up doing that in a 99-seat theater in LA on the weekends, and in a very fast-tracked, wild situation. We did that a couple months later at the Wallace Annenberg in LA, and then like 6 weeks after that, I was actually doing a play at Berkshire Theater Festival when Michael called me, and he was like, hey, when do you close? And I was like, August 15th. And he was like, yeah, I was just wondering because I gotta go see it. And I was like, oh my God, you have to go see it. Like, come, da da da. And then the next day it got leaked that Spring Awakening was moving to Broadway. And I called him and I was like, you didn't want to come see it. And he goes, no, rehearsals start August 11th. So you have a problem. And so I had to leave that production and go rehearse to Broadway, which was a welcome shift. But so, that was and then I had, after Spring Awakening closed, like Molly was saying, like a year and a half with not a single callback. And then within 2 weeks, I booked both you, which was a TV show I did, and the Jagged Little Pill Lab. So you never know.
Well, share, because I don't think, share the journey of Jagged Little Pill. And there's sort of a little familial thing. So Julia Riskin is, and some of our Santa Barbara students all know one of your producers, Marla Phillips. Marla Phillips is a dear friend of ours in Montecito. So share that whole, I'll never forget getting the email from you guys. I'm, the Boston rep, I'm going to be in Boston. Come see me in Jagged, tell the whole thing of workshopping a new piece and then taking that journey. It's an amazing journey, and I share that with everybody.
So it's really, this is one of the things that I think makes theater so special and so it's unlike anything else, because when you do a new musical, what they don't tell you is that you've probably been working on it for 4 years, getting paid very little, with very long breaks in between, with zero guarantees. Everything can change. So basically with Jagged Little Pill, I had when I heard about the very first reading, which was back maybe June 2017, I wrote to my reps and I was like, hey, I'll do anything to be in this show. I'm obsessed with Alanis. Literally, I'll do anything, just anything to get in the room. I'll audition, whatever. And they were like, there's no role for you. Sorry. And I was like, fine. Cut to, I was about to move to LA to work on music again when I got a call as soon as my plane touched down from all of my reps saying, you have to go back to New York, because I had auditioned for this TV show like a couple days before I left town. And I was like, well, I'm never going to get it because I haven't even gotten a call back in a year and a half. So obviously I'm not getting any jobs. And so I left, packed my bags for 3 months, touched down in LA. They said, turn around, you have a table read on Tuesday, which brought me back to New York. So a couple weeks later, when the Jagged Little Pill lab was casting, my rep said, hey, there's no roles for you, but they're doing a general ensemble call if you want to go in for that. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, this is Alanis and Diablo Cody and Diane Paulus, like Tom Kitt. How could I not? Yes, I'm in. And so I showed up for the general call, and I had to read sort of like a couple lines here and there for a bunch of different smaller roles, the kids in the classroom. And I sang I Can't Make You Love Me, which is my go-to audition song. And then I got a call back that was with our associate director and with our music director. And then I got a call back a week later with Diane for this featured ensemble role named Bella. And if you've seen the show, I booked it, but not before 3 days of dance calls, final callback with most of the creative team, but not Diablo and not Alanis. And then the tapes had to be sent to them. So after like the most insane dance call I've ever done in my life. And we waited 3 weeks and then finally got a phone call that I got the job, which, so when I got to the first day of rehearsal, they hand you the script. And if you've seen the show now, you probably know that Bella's a principal role. She's got, pretty much 2 songs. It's a sort of integral role. When we started the lab, that was not the case. I had like 1 scene and a song that sort of existed right at the top of Act 2, which is Predator. And then I sort of disappeared and went back into the ensemble, and I changed my clothes in and out, and sort of I wore a hat when I was in the ensemble and I didn't when I wasn't. And so that pretty much remained throughout the whole lab. And then when we brought it to Boston, it was the same story. And so a lab is basically a bunch of people in a room, you workshop everything, you put together a full production of the show in 3 weeks. And you show a bunch of people with money and they decide whether or not they're going to make the show happen. So it's a high pressure situation for Molly's done these before too. They're like, how do you feel when you're presenting in a lab? It's like,
you feel crazy because they've changed the song that day and you don't want to mess it up for the people that are going to invest in the piece. And you
Also-
don't want to be replaced for the next time they do a lab.
Your role is not guaranteed.
No.
So the last day of the lab, everyone is like, I really hope I get asked back. Like, I really hope I get to go to the regional production, which is not even a guarantee. For us, it was a guarantee, which is really rare because Diane is the artistic director with ART. So we knew there was a production at ART, but we did not know if we were going. And so when we got to ART, for my role in particular, which I think was sort of the thing that maybe changed the most in the sort of evolution of the show, was my character's plot line. And that only changed because, or not only, but a big part of that from why it changed from ART to Broadway was because of the audience's reaction. And I think that's something in theater that's unlike anything else, is like, you get to learn from your audience. You get to see what's working. You get to see what people respond to. And there were, you know, a lot of people responding to sort of Bella's storyline and wanted, and expressing that to our creative team, to me.
And responding to your performance of her. If I can interject here, you know, look, I mean, everything I do is teaching. And so some of you are here just to sort of look and enjoy and hear all these wonderful stories. But I'm hoping that all of you are taking from this lessons that you can apply in your own life as artists, as individuals. I mean, you know, you're only in control of your best self. And so clearly what audiences were responding to was the combination of the character, but the actor whose the character was being embodied was the conduit for that role. And so, you know, it's that age-old lesson. You keep going, and you know, and you've got to have fortitude, or this is not your career. Keep going, Kathryn. Keep going. This is a great story.
I second that, Janet. She's so unbelievable in this show. She comes on stage and your eye immediately goes to her.
Go straight to her.
Yeah.
You can't keep your eyes off of her.
Exactly.
So people pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, keep going.
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons for me was, I was actually at a really interesting time, because what happened between the show at ART and the show, also, I will say, when we were doing the lab, I was filming this TV show at the same time, and I was supposed to be in these 2 episodes where, if you've seen the show my character goes to a grief counseling camp. That was not the original plot line. That was what the producers very kindly wrote in when they allowed me to go do the Jagged Little Pill lab, because when you're doing theater, it doesn't matter that it would have been 2 days of filming. You can't do anything else. Like, when you sign up for a Broadway show, for whatever it is, like, that's your game. And so I was filming the show, and it came out after ART. And so when it came out in January, it kind of blew up, and it opened a lot of doors for me. And I was getting into a lot of rooms I'd never been asked in before. And I was sort of had opportunities to do maybe more television work than I had done before. And, but I knew that Jagged Little Pill was transferring to Broadway. However, at this point, I think I just found out that probably my role would be bumped up to a principal role. And that, you know, there were all of these like plot sort of changes and additions that they were trying to make, but everything was in flux. Like, when you're doing theater, you never know if your song's going to get cut, or if your, you know, storyline is all of a sudden going to get cut in half because it no longer serves the show, or whatever it is. And so I had this moment going into the show on Broadway where I was just like, I really hope I made the right decision to stay in the show, and to keep doing this. And I think the thing that always sort of brought me back to it, and, you know, there was a year between ART and the show transferring to Broadway where none of us could really take any work or do anything, because everything would have eventually ended up interfering with it. And so it was this really sort of stressful time where it's like, the show could close in a week. I hope this works out. I hope people like it. I hope my character exists. I hope it grows. I hope, you know, whatever it is. And all of those things are out of your control in that moment. And so I think this lesson of like, you know, you're never too big for anything. You know, you're never too important for a role or a different job. And if there's a thing that you connect to in the story, if there's something you can really sink your teeth into that you're really passionate about, that's the feeling to chase. Not the promise of success, not the promise of, you know, any level of glitz or glamour or shiny toys. But if, like, for me, telling Bella's story was so something that I knew I could never walk away from, that I could never abandon. And there were so many layers, and working with this team was such a master class. And so, you know, I knew, I was like, I have to do this show. It's meant, you know, it's so intensely something I want to do. And all of those changes from that lab up until a week before we opened, so 3 weeks into previews, we're still getting made. Like, there's a bootleg floating around somewhere online right now that has like third preview, and I saw a clip from it on TikTok of all places. And I was like, that's third preview, that's a different ending. So like, all these things are so ever changing and are so ever growing, and I'm just so, you know, sometimes you gotta just strap in for the ride and really, you know, trust the show you're doing and trust the work, and hope it, you know, hope you get to keep doing it, I guess.
Well, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Alana, how's the time? I think that's a perfect segue to opening it up for questions, don't you?
I was about to say that. Everybody, you are welcome to turn your videos on now. Show Kathryn and Molly your gorgeous faces, and we are going to have a Q&A.
Yay!
Come on in. Maya!
Hello, everyone.
Look at you guys.
Hi, guys.
Say hello.
Alana, Janet, where are your faces?
We don't get
Oh, you want to see my face?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Alana, you have to put me, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, there I am. I did it.
You did it.
But my screen went
Welcome
right.
to my
Everybody's so dark. What did I do wrong?
That's my sister. Huh? I see you.
How do I make everybody lighter? I can't. My screen is really dark. Keep going. Ask questions. Don't worry about it. Oh, Kathryn, Molly. That's my grandbaby. Can you see her up there? That's a portrait of my grandbaby. She's 6 now.
crazy.
Oh my God.
And did
Twice
Sabbath
the
prayer.
age that Molly
She
was.
did Fiddler on the Roof. She did.
What
So,
an angel.
questions? Anybody? Questions? Oh, by the by, we need to recognize students or people, not students. They're not students. There are, I think, 3 or 4 participants that are not Adderley students that are joining us as either guests of other Adderley students or from, you know, I think we have Erica from Connecticut or Massachusetts, and then we've got is it Natalia? That's the friend of Jack Grazier's, and also, so welcome everybody, welcome. And we have right here in Austin is Emma on. Emma is in a program, and she's been working with somebody that is in Jagged Little Pill with you, Kathryn.
Oh my gosh.
Is Emma there?
Yeah, she's in her car.
Yes, I'm right here.
Emma,
Hi,
do you have any questions for Kathryn? I just
well-
saw Emma, Kathryn and Molly. I just saw Emma play Jane Krakowski's role in the Grand Hotel at Performing Arts High School here in Austin, and she was brilliant.
Oh,
so I'm really thrilled that she's getting to meet you guys, because she'll be in New York. She's in her senior year, and she's looking into conservatories and yada yada yada, and she's very serious, clearly. So Emma, do you have any questions for either Kathryn or Molly?
Yeah, so I guess right now, it's hard, especially while we're all in quarantine, to find ways to be creative and motivated all the time. So I guess, like, do you guys have any advice on ways to stay creative and motivated and positive during this time?
Mal?
mean, I think that for me, what we can't do right now is perform. And we're all performers. So I've been leaning into all the other things that I love to do, which is whether it be songwriting or writing in other ways, just finding ways to be creative and to, write a monologue for myself, write a script for myself, write a pilot for to set up things that I can do in this time that you're never given the gift of time in your life, of just like time. And why don't we use it in an interesting way? And I also think when this is over, the world's going to open up and people are going to want to be taken out of their experience, and creativity is going to be in a really beautiful place. So if you can do anything to tee yourself up for that moment, or learn a new language, or learn to dance, or work on your singing, like Kathryn's been saying, she's been taking weekly singing lessons, like do what you can with this time, because we're never given uninterrupted time where we don't have to go to work or go to the doctor. We have this moment. What about you, Kathryn?
It's so funny because when we started this, when they first told us we were shutting down, they were like, hey, you're going to have a month off. And I was like, score. This is awesome. Like, I was the one in the theater that was telling everyone, I was like, we're going to have to take 2 weeks off, And everyone was like, that's wishful thinking. And I was like, I wouldn't mind a break. Like, Broadway is really hard. And so I was thinking that, when we first got off, I was like, I have a month. I'm going to record this record. I have all these songs that I'm going to finish. I built a studio. I was so ready to go. And I worked every single night. And I kind of I'm somewhat incapable of taking time off. And so I was really, really driven. And then it's like our return date sort of kept getting further and further away. I was like, oh, I should slow down because I'm already burnt out of my vacation from writing these songs. So for me, it's been all about striking a balance. And I ended up sort of like releasing those songs, and now I'm working on volume 2 of that, which is exciting. So for me, the biggest thing that I've been trying to do is exercise the other, like, my other sort of areas of weakness that I don't get to. Like, I've been sewing. I was sewing masks for a while. I started a garden. I'm taking horseback riding lessons again. I take singing lessons once a week. I'm taking an acting class. Like, I'm trying to sort of become a student of all of these things that make my life more full. Because I think you can't be a good artist if your life is not full.
Amen.
And yeah, this is such a turning point in the world. And how can I be involved in wanting to change the world to be a better place? That will only make me a better artist and a better person. And
hugely.
Yeah.
Lots of education right now in all sort of ways, I think, is really crucial.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Yay. Thank you.
That was great answers, you guys. Somebody else? Anyone else?
I just want to was like to work with Jacob Tremblay, who gave such a fantastic performance in Room, Molly.
It was such a wonderful experience. I actually think it reminded me a lot of being at the Adderley School, because I hadn't worked with children yet, and children are so uninhibited and so free. And I was brought back to how I was when I first started doing the Adderley School. And I would just go up there and do whatever, and I didn't care. And as I've gotten older, I've become way more self-conscious and, oh, what does this person think of me? If I do this, will I be too much? And I was watching these kids be so free and trying. When you're doing a comedy, you're given alts and you try so many different jokes, and they'll figure it out in the editing room which ones they're going to pick. And all the kids were so excited and so free and would try anything. And the adults were more, oi, did I do that right? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, how do I get back to how I was when I first started doing Adderley? So I actually was very inspired by Jacob, and I think he's a better actor than me. I have a lot to learn from him.
Not possible.
It's so fun.
Sure. Very funny.
Maya, do you have a question?
I do. Okay, so this question is for both of you. Both of you can answer. So I'm wondering what the main difference is between like rehearsals for a Broadway production and like when you're a student, like with the Adderley School, for example? Like, what's the main difference?
Nothing, except for at Adderley, you're guaranteed to be with your best friends, and in a Broadway show, you're not.
I feel exactly the same way, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think and it sort of speaks to what we said earlier. It's like, I think that Janet and Alana and Akina did such a good job of instilling a respect in what we were doing and inherently a respect for ourselves while we were there, that it was never like, oh, after school program. It was like, I'm doing a show and there are people buying tickets to the show and I will be good in the show. Like, it was, there was no like, oh, it's just a silly thing I do. There's fireworks, by the way. I don't know if you're like hearing, it sounds scary, but it's fireworks. And so I think there wasn't really a difference except for, guaranteed best friends at Adderley.
And a bigger budget.
A bigger budget.
Yeah.
Totally. We wouldn't have
Not always
same
fractors.
Bigger budget. But
I do find I did a play last year, and I was the first time I had ever done a play in a bigger play in New York. And I was, the only difference was that I didn't have Janet in the, like, that I was kind of looking for someone to be like cheering me on, and no one was there doing that.
Bravo!
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, having Janet at Jagged Little Pill, I knew I could hear her. And I was so happy. No, it made me so happy. It was like, I told everyone too. I was like, guys, Janet's here tonight. I was like, everybody knew. Everyone knew. There's no better feeling, and I know everyone understands this, than when you finish your number and you hear Janet cheering for you. It's just like, I did it. It's like such good, because Janet does not give a compliment that is undeserved. And that is something that is a huge gift, because you want to be great, I think, and Alana, Akina, and Janet made us want that for ourselves and for them, which is huge.
Someone else? Natalia, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
What's up?
Where are you from?
We are from the Canary Islands.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Ask a question. Welcome.
I'm actually translating from a sister, and she has a question for Kathryn. And she would like to know what feelings do you experience while creating music, and what inspires you throughout this process?
Life inspires me. Writing music for me has always been how I've understood my brain. And so it's always been the way I sort of can, I always think about it as like, if you put all of your experiences in a box, writing music is me sitting down later, opening it up and putting them all out and trying to understand what happened. And it's how I, have catharsis with certain feelings. It's like therapy. It's, for me, nothing in my life is really finished until it's written about. It's given me, it's like breathing at a certain point. It's something I do. And everything I write, it's how I have a very hard time being anything less than honest, I think, in songwriting, which I think in life, we're so accustomed to, someone says, how are you? And you say, I'm great. But like, you were crying in the bathroom 5 minutes earlier, so you're not great, but you said you're great. And in songwriting, you don't get to do that. You get to like so unabashedly express all of the sort of, cobwebby areas of your brain that you feel sometimes that you don't have the permission to explore. And so for me, that's just, it's just such a gift that I get to do that.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Larissa, are you there? We have a a student that started in our Santa Barbara school as a wee babe, and then she moved to San Antonio, Texas, and is a student at the Performing Arts High School there, and has a friend. Introduce your friend, Larissa, and do you have a question?
Actually, my friend couldn't make it today. She had last minute plans.
No worries. Do you have a question for either Kathryn or Molly or both?
One the thing with auditions for me that I usually struggle with. Yeah. When you're auditioning, is it how do you figure out like what song to do depending on the show?
I feel
And the hush fell over the crowd.
I feel like Kathryn and I both don't have very traditionally musical theater voices. So I think I have always struggled with that. And I've always just leaned into picking a couple songs that I feel most comfortable on. And honestly, it doesn't matter the show. I will just probably do one of those songs. And then if they like me, I'll do the song from the show. But I think just having something that you feel you can be your full self in is the best advice, I feel.
Yeah, you just want to feel comfortable. You know, you want to walk into that audition knowing your material cold, because you're gonna be nervous and you're gonna talk fast and you're gonna be worried if you're sweaty and like, you know what I mean? There's so many things going on in your brain that you have to minimize the variables, I think. Like my dad always says, you know, you should always show up early enough for an audition so that you're bored by the time you go in. Like you know, you wanna be able to feel to minimize the stress. So it doesn't matter what the vibe of the show is, try and get close. But what you really want is something that you feel confident in. And same with what you're wearing, same with everything about it. You have to feel confident and comfortable. And that's going to put everyone else in the room at ease, I think.
I agree.
By the by, guys, anybody who saw Ben when he was here in Austin, Molly is who sang with him. He called her out on stage and they did, what was it, a Bonnie Raitt song y'all did?
What did we do?
What song did y'all do?
Oh, Dimming of the Day.
Yes.
But speaking of that, I was so freaking nervous. So that never goes away. Let me tell you that.
You guys killed it, and I cried my entire face off. So there.
Well, it was having you guys there was the biggest gift of that was magic. Magic.
Someone else. Use this time.
Here, I'll ask one. So what was one of your favorite rehearsal moments in the Adderley school? Just any moment.
So many. I really loved our Velma classes.
Yes.
Alana. I really did. Alana gave us our Velma lessons where we had to learn all of the like crazy Velma dances in Chicago. And that was how I learned how to kick my leg really high.
Yeah, buddy.
And dance on a chair in heels. Wait, and I remember, this was my favorite moment ever, and I hope I can say this, but I remember, Alana, you telling me that you got a boyfriend because he saw you in Chicago. When you did it.
Boyfriend.
And so you were like, you never know who will show up. And I was like, maybe I'll get a boyfriend. I didn't.
We invited so many boys and no one was interested in us. Like,
I know, no one. We were, you know, but we had each other.
Yes, exactly.
And we still do.
We have two other Velma Kellys in this Zoom meeting. Maya and Ainsley were Velma last year.
Yes, I love it.
Rehearsal.
Ainsley, do you have a question? And Ainsley was just Sophie in Mamma Mia at her high school.
Yes.
And Kate was Meryl Streep. Kate was Donna. Yeah. Ainsley, do you have a question?
Yes. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So for me personally, I just kind of see the idea of graduating high school and going out into the world trying to be an actress quite daunting.
It is.
Almost untraditional in a way. So I would just want to ask, what's y'all's advice on finding the bravery, courage, and confidence to do that?
Still working on it. I think that one of the things I've learned is that success is just not going to look like how you want it to or how you think it will. You know, every single incredible thing that has happened in my life, and Spring Awakening on Broadway, Jagged Little Pill, all of these things I could not have planned. Like they were some like cosmic divine intervention that put me in the right place at the right time. All that being said, none of them would have happened had I not had a million other, I didn't get that job, but I coached really hard for it. And I, didn't, taking all those classes that feel pointless when you literally cannot get a call back for a year and a half. I can't stress how many times you will get told no. And for such a variety of reasons, you'll never know why you're not right for it. You'll never, every single thing you can work absolutely as hard. You can be so brilliant and it might still not go your way. But what you don't know is that the casting associate in the corner of the room in 3 years is going to be the casting director for a brand new pilot on HBO and is going to cast you in that because he saw your audition. So it's just like, you don't know anything. And the moment you think that something is absolutely right, you'll probably be wrong. And then something else will come from around the corner and you'll be like, oh, got it. So keep going, work your ass off. And make sure that when you step in every single room, you're prepared. You're there because you want to tell a great story. You learn people's names and you do everything with kindness.
Thank you so much.
Molly?
I mean, I think Kathryn could not have said it better, but I think especially in a sad moment like this in the world, it just shows you that life is so what happens when you're busy making other plans. It just happens. So it is never what it looks like. But if you really want to be creative and you want to be an actor, follow that, and just follow that weird clunky ride of whatever it will be. But if it's in your heart, it will happen. It will just be different than you expected.
I'll never forget when I was the age of my students now. When I was 15 years old and at Performing Arts High School in Houston, Texas, the first graduating class. And Elia Kazan was a friend of my director. And so he came to the school and, without saying hello, without any sort of small talk, without anything, she introduced him to the class. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was, if there is anything else in the world that will make you happy. So that is the answer to that is what Molly and Kathryn have been saying over and over and over and over in this talk, that there is something about performing and creating that makes them tick, that makes them live. Okay. And so you've heard me say the fun is in the excellence, or the work is the fun, right? If that is not the way you roll, if it's all about the glitz and glamour and how many lines you have and which part you're getting to play, and you know what I mean, you're headed for a world of pain. It has got to be about something more organic, more whole person than that. It's got to be something that moves you. So anyway,
the president.
That's
so much.
Yeah, that's it.
Somebody else?
I have a question. Okay, it's not really meaningful, but I'm just kind of like sitting here and I'm curious.
Yeah.
What are y'all's celebrity crushes? Like, who do you have a celebrity crush on?
Oh man, I don't know.
That's so hard.
Holly Gordon is my celebrity crush.
Yeah, Kathryn Gallagher is my celebrity crush.
I'm trying to think. I want to give an actual funny answer.
I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know.
I think. Oh, I mean, my age-old answer. is Mike Birbiglia, because I'm such a fan of his, and he knows this. He's a comic, and he is, I think, the funniest, most brilliant man. I can recite all of his like comedy specials. It's intense. He's the only person I've ever been like deeply starstruck by, which was confusing for both of us. And he's just so brilliant. And so he's probably like, he's who I get most excited around, definitely.
I
don't know. Actual crush?
Celebrity crushes is your dad, Kathryn?
I think it makes sense. Listen, we're a good looking fam.
Yes,
I don't
we are a good looking family. Y'all got good.
Got good genes. Molly, who's your celebrity crush?
I don't know. I feel like I always say Chris Rock because I just love him, but I don't.
You're saying that.
I don't know. That's just my go-to. But I could go so many different ways.
I know.
Who's yours, Marissa?
My celebrity crush, I have two. My first one is Timothée Chalamet. So I'm a little heartbroken right now that he is cheating on me. And then another one is that Disney kid, Joshua Bassett. I'm just so in love with him. I'm in love with him.
I approve. Very good.
Both be lucky to have you. Let me tell you that.
Well, I have to just say, because I saw that little stupid thing, because I love to watch Judge Judy, and I record it, and the TMZ comes on right, but sometimes as a part of my little thing. And so they showed him out on the beach with his new little girlfriend. And doesn't he look like Jack Grazier's COVID hair? They look the same. It was hysterical. I mean, they played the same role in Beautiful Boy, and they are very similar. But the fact that he even had the little blonde spikes, I was just like, what the heck? So,
incredible. Anyway. I love it.
Needed to have that conversation.
Who is this? 100%. I'm seeing.
I wish I had more funny.
Marissa. Who is this? I'm waving at you. Who are you, big girl?
I am just a fan.
Yourself. I don't know you.
Oh, hi. I'm just a fan. I wanted to come on, say hi to everyone.
Well, tell us who you are and where you're from, and ask a question.
I'm from Long Island, so in New York. I guess a question. Do you guys have any roles that you had like growing up that stick in your brain as like pretty impactful for your growth as a performer?
I have a moment with Janet that has definitely has come into my brain in every single rehearsal room I've ever been in. Does that count? Okay, so I remember this moment. We were doing Hairspray, second time around. This time I was Tracy. And I had just done the Good Morning Baltimore reprise. And Janet, it was like I mean, it's weird saying it because it was a compliment, but it kept a standard for my work. And I believe it was something like, Janet had told me that in that moment, I had like every different color in the song. And it was the first time I understood that it was purely accidental that first time, but every single time I've approached a scene or a song, my brain has then immediately went to, well, what colors are here? If it's an angry song, what's right beneath that? If that's red, then is there sadness? That's a gray blue moment. If below that, is it shame? Is it embarrassment? There's all of these different layers. And so I think back to that moment so vividly because it's so deeply informed and sort of set the standard for everything I did beyond that. So there's that.
That's beautiful. I agree. I think like using a song, how to act a song, I so that foundation of that, I would not even know how to look at a song without the Adderley School. And I just think of, like, what are you really saying? What does this really mean? And really taking it piece by piece apart. But I remember, when I was Hetty LaRue in How to Succeed in Business.
I remember when you were Hetty LaRue.
For some reason, I think they helped me reach a freedom and I just loved getting to play these crazy character roles when I was like 12 years old.
And Molly was so brilliant. Her comedy in this, when you came down the staircase, right? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely genius.
But I think finding the funny And my favorite roles are the roles that come in, do something funny, and I'm a little shy, so I'm like, and then go away. And I just think finding that love of those character roles at the Adderley School is such a gift, and finding the moments of weirdness and wackiness. Those were some of my favorite, but I just, that moment sticks out to me.
You were so brilliant. Oh my God.
I think I forgot my lines. I would always forget my lines.
Same.
Janine, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. My question's for Kathryn. It's finally nice to meet you. I love your music. I'm actually not too far from you right now in Hull. I had to leave the city. Yep.
Love it.
I have a summer home down there. I don't know if that's considered a summer home, but whatnot. I was just wondering if you could let me know of your writing process, like how you go about that. Like, do you come up with obviously the lyrics first, then your chords, or at the same time? Because I love your music, obviously, and your lyrics are amazing.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. For me, it's always, every single song starts from a need to say something. So usually it's like a line or a concept, or like I just finished a song yesterday, sort of being back in my grandmother's house. The last time I was here was her funeral, and it was this really sort of weighted moment. But this song started with the idea of, I kind of like have a terrible sense of smell, but I associate this house with smelling like the ocean. And meanwhile, that verse, so the whole first verse of the song was, and this entire song started about this idea that I still feel like this house smells like the ocean, even though I can't smell it anymore. That verse has been scrapped, but the entire song came from that image for me, and that moment. And it's like, if every song is a photograph and every verse is exploring like a different sort of part of it, and the chorus sort of brings you back to the focal point of the photograph. That's sort of always how I think about it. And I like to explore every different angle, and but it's always from a desire to express something, I think. So usually lyric first, I guess. And then melodies, I'm trying to be more adventurous with, but I tend to fall into similar traps. And so that's what I'm working on right now, is getting adventurous melodies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are about to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. We have time for one more question. Anybody? Oh, Julia. She says, I'm really sorry to hear about your grandma. I lost my dad recently, and I lost my mom in the Montecito mudslide in 2018.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Julia. Thank you so much.
Okay, movies have really helped me, including the
Say that last part, Angela. We lost you.
movies have really, including the ones Molly has been in, and movies like The Princess Diaries.
Yes. Art is incredible. Art can hold your hand through everything.
Truly.
Amen, amen. Erica is a visitor. Erica, are you there? Do you have a question? Is she there?
She's here. Her video is off, and I don't think she's connected to sound. But Erica, if you want to connect to sound and turn your video on and ask a question, you are welcome and encouraged to.
No.
Everyone gets shy for the last question.
Exactly.
It's a lot of pressure.
Well, then you know what, guys? Molly, Kathryn, if there was one final parting shot that the two of you wanted to give, some sort of quirk of inspiration or motivation, or something to encourage all of these young aspiring actors, as they take on the next generation of artists, what would you say to them?
I would say just lean into what makes you uniquely you, and never try to be like what you think you're supposed to be. Celebrate that uniqueness, and be kind to yourself. I wish that I was more kind to myself when I was younger.
Beautiful, beautiful.
That's
Kathryn?
the truth. I think that there's something that happens when you're doing theater. There's this like little piece of magic that gets created, and it can only happen in live theater, and it can only happen in rooms when everybody gets together and is sort of working together to tell the same story. And for the first time in my life, I found that at Adderley, and I imagine most of you had that similar experience getting together in that room. And every single job I've done, every collaborative experience, there's always this moment of magic that you find, and that magic doesn't change, and that magic doesn't it doesn't go away. And so, you know, if in the times of rejection and the times of despair and self-doubt, and when you're saying very mean things to yourself that you don't mean but you can't help, try and go back to those moments in the rehearsal room at Adderley or on stage at Magicopolis. We did it at Magicopolis. I don't know where you did shows, but on stage in the room, those moments where you really felt connected to the people around you, to the words you're saying, to the music, where time sort of stops, and revisit those moments and remind yourself that that connection, that energy is what you're doing. That's why you're auditioning. That's why you're working. That's why you're hearing no, because at the end of that is that magic somewhere. And so keep going, work hard, and know that it doesn't get easier, but it gets better.
Bravo. Wow. Bravo! So should we all sing this time together, our traditional closing song in mass hysteria on Zoom? Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you, Molly. Everyone clear your throats. Here we go.
We just get started before you know it.
Pull your
hair. Love to say
you guys so much. Thank you. We'll see you.
I love you all
soon.
so much.
Love you madly. Bye-bye, Natalia. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
so much. Bye-bye. Bye. Love you, love you, love you.